Hi and welcome to The Winning Factor. I'm Alan Aitken, and on this show each week we take a look at some upcoming races in Hong Kong and try to isolate an angle to the race that might be a path to finding the winner. Well, the big day has finally arrived. The number one global spotlight meeting in the Hong Kong calendar is this Sunday, the Longines Hong Kong International Races. Now, all over the Hong Kong Jockey Club website, you'll find a video, you'll find track work video, race video, interviews, everything you could possibly need to have an educated opinion at the 4 Group 1s on Sunday. I hope I'm going to contribute to that a little bit later on, but first of all, we're going to take a look at one of the undercard races, race 3, where our winning factor is the map. So this is a Class 3, 1200 metres, often a race where we see some decent horses of the future. And there are a few in this race with prospects, but I think we can cut it down to 4 big players. Savvy Brilliant for Zach Purton, James McDonald's mount Devano, Patch of Cosmo for Luke Ferraris, and Lifeline Express, the John Size trained horse, right down at the foot of the weights. Now, all of them have a strong winning chance in Sunday's race, the horses that I've mentioned there, but I'm particularly focused on Savvy Brilliant and also Lifeline Express. And when we look at the replay featuring Lifeline Express's latest run, we get some extras as well, because this race also has a young superstar who leads the race, Devano, and also Patch of Cosmo. So there's a little bit to look at in race 192. Now, Lifeline Express, he's in gate 14, red and yellow colours, Patch of Cosmo, blue and white, gate 10, and Devano in whitish colours, gate 2. Patch of Cosmo, slow out as usual, you see him out the back there, and Lifeline Express, well, he begins okay, but is let drift back to last from the wide draw, while Devano, who can miss away sometimes, but he's out okay here, and James McDonald parks him in 5th, just behind the speed, which you can see is neither especially fast or slow, but is genuine enough. So those out the back are giving a bit of a start away. Backers of Devano are in a happy place straightening for home, but watch what happens. Devano gets a weakening runner dumped in his lap, has nowhere to go and gets pushed back through the field as first Patch of Cosmo and then late Lifeline Express produce big finishes down the outside, while young superstar hangs on to win the race. So James McDonald eased down Devano there when the race was out of reach, so neither the finishing position or the margin really mean a lot. Put a pen through that. He will be one of the leading chances on Sunday. Lifeline Express, he won a race as a 3-year-old. I think he's come back a little bit better and stronger as a 4-year-old. Also a 4-year-old is Savvy Brilliant, and he's done a good job in 4 starts in Hong Kong, 2 wins, a second, and he's really his own worst enemy at times by missing the start, and that was probably what cost him at his latest appearance. So this is race 210, he's in gate 3, red, white and blue colours, and he's still slowly away, although this is the best start we've seen from Savvy Brilliant so far. Still not perfect, but then he gets clobbered and he is back in his usual place at the rear. Now the heat map shows a genuine pace up front to help him. Zach Purton, he's able to steal some ground up the inside rail during the run, and then we see him latch onto the back of the eventual winner, Swift Ascend in the pink and white colours, as they turn into the home straight. But it's all just too much to ask. He finishes well and beats the rest, but he can't claw back the margin, finishing second. Now, for my money, considering the big handicap rise that he had there, that effort was as good as either of Savvy Brilliant's wins prior. But as a chronic start misser, both he and Patch of Cosmo make their own job harder. And when we look at the map for Sunday's race, I think that it's Lifeline Express who's going to get a really big boost, because he isn't a horse who has to get that far back. He's not a slow beginner. That was all about the outside draw that you saw there. This time with gate 6, I think we'll see Alexi Bedell have him closer, maybe more like midfield, although we have seen him race quite handy to the pace in the past. Young superstar, he goes from gate 4 to gate 14, but I think we'll still see him trying to lead, as both of his wins have come that way. And Wonder Star is also a quick horse out there who will be pushing forward with him. It looks a good, potentially even strong pace in the race with all that speed drawn out wide. Devano, well, I expect that he will look for a similar position to what we saw in that replay, provided he jumps cleanly. But Savvy, Brilliant and Patch of Cosmo will give up a start with those slow beginnings, and that never makes things any easier. So the tip from me in race 3, Lifeline Express. His winning factor, the map. Now, I don't think we're going to see him anywhere near as far back as we did in that replay. I think he'll be maybe even close to Devano in the run and a long way ahead of two of his key rivals. So with the lightweight, I think Lifeline Express is in great form and ready to break through. However, the focus of Sunday is obvious, the 4 Group 1 international races, and I thought it was worth taking a little bit of a statistical look at those events. Now, they can be very parochial with the punters wanting to back horses from their own jurisdiction. I thought it was worthwhile taking a look at who's justified getting on the bandwagon and who isn't. So in the order that they're going to be run, first of all, let's take a look at the Vase. And this is the one of the 4 Group 1 races where the local impact is rarely strong. So what you can see here is that hope springs eternal in the locally based betting market. These are horses arranged by the country that they represent, and you can see here people back horses they know. So more is generally expected in the betting of the Hong Kong runners, even though stayers are definitely not our forte. The local horses run below betting expectations, while the British, French and Japanese show a minor betting edge. In the sprint, well, Hong Kong has dominated this race since its inception, and when we look at the figures, these could look even better than they do. I haven't included 20 runnings here. I've only included 18 because the distance was changed from 1,000 metres to 1,200 metres in 2006. But the 2 prior runnings at 1,000 metres were also won by Hong Kong, so that would read 16 from 20 if I took it back as far as our other Group 1s. That said, the market nails the local runners who perform pretty much as the betting expects. The notable takeaways, I think, from these figures are the underperformance by the occasional Australian sprinters that show up. We would expect more because it is the home of turf sprinting, while Lord Kanaloa's 2 victories have definitely polished up the Japanese figures that wouldn't look very encouraging without him. Now, the Hong Kong Mile this year looks a bit more open than it has in many past years when we've had champions, the likes of Golden 60, Beauty Generation, Good Barbar, Ambitious Dragon, those kinds of horses going around. But the figures still suggest you undersell the local milers at your peril. Even though it's a race the local horses dominate overwhelmingly, the market still hasn't got them short enough, with Hong Kong horses winning almost 2 more of the last 20 runnings than the betting markets had expected. And finally, the Cup. And I did say that Lord Kanaloa's sprint performances had put a bit of a lipstick on the figures for the Japanese in that race. Well, Romantic Warrior has done much the same for the Hong Kong horses in the 2,000 metre Cup. Hong Kong's runners tend to be overrated by the market in this race, and without the Warrior, it would be a bit of a bloodbath. He'll be a hot favourite to keep up appearances and win again, but longer term, it has been the Japanese who represent a better betting value in the race, while the market does seem to get most of the other visitors close to correct. So that's the breakup of the 4 races, but when we look at overall figures, it's clear to see where the value has been. Of the jurisdictions with a lot of runners, Japan punches above market expectations. You see their UAE runners have had a good record at the meeting thanks to Godolphin, though it is now 14 years since the last winner from the UAE, so they're not regular participants nowadays. As you'd probably expect, the local punters are a bit keener on the Hong Kong chances than they should be, but the same is true of runners representing Australia and Ireland who are also overbet. The other graphic I wanted to take a look at regarding Sunday's racing is one that I wheeled out for last year's race when Golden 60 was coming off a long break into the Hong Kong Mile. Now, he hadn't raced for 224 days, and the champ was able to do that and win in great style. This year, one of the big talking horses for the mile is the Japanese 3-year-old Jantar Mantar, looking to do something similar with 217 days since his NHK mile win in May. Now, the overwhelming majority of Group 1 runners at this meeting have had a recent run, at least something within 100 days. So it is a very difficult ask, but as you can see here, it has been done 3 times in the last 20 years, so it isn't impossible by any means. Well, that's it from the Winning Factor this week. Enjoy the big day on Sunday. We'll see you next time.